If I want to take a checkpoint of the virtual machine, I can simply right click and there is an option for checkpoint. When I do that, it says under status, creating a checkpoint. And that created pretty quick. I'm gonna click this, please don't show this message again, and choose OK. But now I can see I have the checkpoint with this timestamp on it for RTS Serve 2. So now I could go install applications in RTS Serve 2. I could go delete data. I could do anything I want in RTS Serve 2. I could simply come back to this checkpoint and I could choose apply. Now, when you do this, it always asks you, and it actually recommends, that you create a checkpoint now and then apply the prior checkpoint. The reason, if you revert back to your checkpoint, you move back in time. But if for some reason it did not solve your issue, you could simply go back to where you were. Meaning, if I create this, you'll see I have a new checkpoint with this timestamp. So now this machine has been reverted to, well, 825. Now, let's say these are, days apart, but you revert back to this and it does not solve your issue. Now that I have a checkpoint that's more current, I could simply apply this checkpoint and it would simply move you back to the time prior to you reverting to your earlier checkpoint. So unforgiving in that sense. Now, the checkpoints themselves, RTS Serve 2 has 2 checkpoints. If I open the C drive on my system and go to Users, Public, Public Documents, Hyper-V, Virtual Hard Disks, I can see all my virtual hard disks. And notice RTS Serve 2 has these 2 files under it. Now, both of these files have an AVHDX extension. These are actually the checkpoints. So I can see this one is only 4 megabytes and the one below is 55 megabytes. And you'll see it down here as well. Kind of just goes away up here. But one's 4 megs, one's 55 megs. Depending on what changed is what determines the size of these checkpoints. If I were to go back here, and I'm going to delete this checkpoint. Now, if I pull that folder up again, you can see now under RTS Serve 2, there's only one AVHDX file. So each time you create a checkpoint, it just saves all that data into a file associated with your virtual machine. When you apply a checkpoint to revert back to it, all it does is take all the changes stored in that checkpoint file and it just integrates it with your virtual hard drive when your machine starts up. Pretty fascinating. But I don't need anything else out of that drive. Now, if I go back to the settings of the virtual machine itself, the checkpoints here, you could disable checkpoints if I clear that. But when it's enabled, we have our production checkpoints we talked about, and we have our standard checkpoints we could define. And I can also use automatic checkpoints. They're just automatically created. Just each time you start your machine, it's going to create an automatic checkpoint you could then revert back to. Now here, this checkpoint file location. Now it's a little confusing at first. It says choose where to store the checkpoint configuration and checkpoint save state files for the virtual machine. It says C program data Microsoft Windows Hyper-V. That is where the configuration will be stored, not the actual data. The data is stored with the virtual hard drive we just saw in that public documents folder. This is where the configuration information about the checkpoint would actually be stored. I always find that odd that they word it like that and that they don't list both paths, but just config information stored there.